Hello, good morning, happy Monday, and welcome to International Flavor. I am Samuel Trapp. This is Damn Radio, and you are listening to International Flavor this morning. And I had a lot of events over the weekend that I was working on. We're working on a project, and we're how do we call it? Coming out of the closet. We're coming out of the closet this morning. We are ready. We are set to jet. Today is the first broadcast reality day of Civic Outlaws and the modern law ecosystem. I've talked about them a little bit in the past, last couple of 3 weeks. I've talked a little bit about it and what we do. Our website is active and ready and finalized. We did a little bit of tweaking over the weekend and a little bit of additions, subtractions. I'm going to, like, for example, we'll have a job postings page, opportunities page in this. So I encourage any listener to go out to our new sites at the modern law ecosystem. And so a basic explanation of the modern law ecosystem will be provided here in today's show and what we are looking for. I have quite a bit of international coverage that I wanted to get to as well here on International Flavor. But I'm going to take like 5-10 minutes and explain to you about our modern law ecosystem. And if you go to the modern law ecosystem page, you will find that we are the new standard in legal intelligence. This is important because what's happening in the world of in the legal world, in the legal structure, in legal AI, is that let me give you an example of how we work and what is fantastic. We work with several law firms right now, and we are growing and building. I'm going to need rather swiftly a paralegal. We have opportunities for those who wish to work from home. This is large and going to be a pretty cool project everywhere across the nation, and truly, we could do it across the world, and that is our effort. We think that we have something enormous here, and if you go back, we can be. Here's the problem with being a lawyer, okay, and having practiced law on an individual basis for a good long time. 15 years or so, 14 until they targeted me in the Missouri bar. And Civic Outlaws is because of government overreach, similar to that. We have several on our site that we are talking about. We are now have the complete, and we're ready to accept more lawyers than we've been working with, okay? So I work for law firms in several different places in the country. And, well, with modern law ecosystem, I've done it individually for a little bit, like out of a small office in my house, and now we have a formal business location. Our signage is the only thing that's a delay, and we're working on getting that taken care of here in our offices located in Osage Beach. And it's pretty cool. Anyway, you can get a hold of me to find out more about that and give you a quick little rundown that we can be your global back office, okay? So if you have caseload as a lawyer, here's the problem with being an individual lawyer. You either are in your office making money, or you're in court, or you're at a deposition, or you're on the road to one of the... You can never get a hold of your lawyer. Everybody knows that. And the lawyers are quite busy. And what this system does is allows lawyers to be lawyers. You can focus on client contact. You can focus on your organizational strategy. Now, what we do at Modern Law Ecosystem is we're the back office for that. Where do you think that lawyers get all of their paperwork? They don't sit and write all of that. They have qualified paralegals. And since the bar has taken my ability to be a lawyer in the state of Missouri, unless I lick somewhere where I'd prefer not to lick. That's a personal story outside of the modern law ecosystem. But I'll never agree to do what they want me to do. That doesn't mean I don't have the know-how and the knowledge. And I have a team of people that I'm working with. We do work for other law firms. We stay inside of the boundaries of what lawyers do, all the lawyer work, right? But when I was a lawyer, I had a fantastic back staff. And that made me able to focus on the client and on the strategy and use the brain that I paid $200,000 to obtain and to do those things. Well, I still have the brain. I just don't have the ability in the state of Missouri because of, and you can go back and listen to past shows of mine. I'm not going to go on a rant about that again today. Yeah, we certainly will, however, do that kind of thing. And I've already got a questionnaire, a request from the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel. I'm going to be quite vocal and open about it. And if they want to come and check out the operation, they don't need to. But I'm not the lawyers that we work for or that purchase our products. They or our services. They control the cases. I and my team, we are the back office, and we do this for firms in different parts of the country. We have licensees in quite a few states, and I'm looking for more. So we attach them to our system. Now, in order to get that, one of the things that is interesting in the field of law right now, I could give a lecture on it, and I'm the managing director or president or whatever you want to call it of the modern law ecosystem. And I have a media team actually that the world is changing. Okay, you don't practice law the way you used to practice law. Now a lot of things are in Zoom. I got to be a witness in a case. I got a call from somebody in another state and said, you participated in the administration of this. You sent some emails back and forth or some communications to an insurance company, and I've got lay a foundation for these documents in court. And I may need you to lay the foundation for these documents in court, depending on what the judge decides. Can I speak with you about this? Can you be available? And can you either show up in this other state or can you appear by Zoom? And I was like, well, I can definitely appear by Zoom. And that is being done in courts across the nation. That court proceedings, they are now, most of the courtrooms have very nice, very good court TV court. They have screens in there. They have upgraded their systems to allow for the appearance of a witness of sometimes even the lawyers are appearing. COVID changed the world, okay, and it changed the legal profession too. And because it's much different. I've been working doing this in an office in my home for several years now, and always been a consultant since for other people. I still have the brain. I just can't get the license, and so I put together the strategies. Well, my team puts together strategies for us, and we can have a pretty good strategy for you and the back part. And one of the things that we have is an AI platform that a lawyer can join our ecosystem. And in reality, here's what a lawyer really could do. Work out of his house, go to court, meet and call with clients, in our offices or in a local office wherever he wants to. That there's these when you go to bigger cities, they have the small offices and you rent an office. I've done this in quite a few places in the world, and you can go and get an office and rent an office space. I remember when I was doing my radio show in Qatar. Oh no, where was I? Oh, I was in Tatarstan. I was in Tatarstan, Russia, and I went to an office space, rented an office for several hours for an afternoon, and I did my radio show from an office in Tatarstan in a quiet room that I had rented. And a lot of people are doing this. You can. This is how you expand. This is the way the world is going. And we are on top of this. So if you're an attorney practicing law and you wish to explore our services and what we can provide for you, which is excellent case management, excellent research and development of your case, working with modern law with Civic Outlaws, the modern law ecosystem. Civic Outlaws is our charity. And Civic Outlaws, what we do is we go and we attack government overreach. And if you go to so the modern law ecosystem, I've explained, and that we can provide whatever. We will merge our operations to fit seamlessly with massive technology ability and massive ability to formulate cases into your structure, whatever that structure is. So if you go to our attorneys for attorneys page, we have several things that we provide. The first one is what we call PaaS, software as a service. We call this Paralegals-as-a-Service, and you can have a paralegal as a service. Paralegal as a service is the core of what we provide. If you look at the website, we function as your on-demand or what's called fractional paralegal team. We handle the work that consumes all the time in your office, but doesn't require a courtroom presence, doesn't require you to be present to talk to the clients. We don't talk to the clients. You do. That's your job. We might do some phone if we do your front office, because that's another service. If we do that, we could talk to clients only in many states. Some states I personally can't talk to them, so I won't talk to the clients. But I will if it's just a scheduling or they're calling and get a court date, whatever, stuff like that. But I don't talk to clients because some states don't want to do it because it's a suspended license in the state of Missouri for doing nothing, by the way, and it should be restored anyway. But I won't agree to what they want me to agree to. At least not yet. I would if they said I could have my license back, but I won't do it. Although on the hope that I get my license back. Screw that. With some and Civic Outlaws is pretty. We're pretty brutal in Civic Outlaws, and I'm going to get to that too. But if you go to our back office, we have research as a service, RAAS, and Paralegals as a service, PaaS, and we have AI assisted, human reviewed quality product for you to take. We can do your back office and legal support. In your front office, we can do the intake of massive amounts of data. Like I took a case file from an attorney here recently and took that case file with more than 5,000 pages of crap. Right. And, our system, and it's proprietary. We have our own system. We're developing the app that you can go to Modern Law Ecosystem and download our app to help you do case planning, case submission, contact, everything that is part of the ecosystem of law. Court reporters can report to us. Chiropractors can join our system. Doctors and expert witnesses can join the system of the back office of any law firm. Does that make, I mean, that is the plan. And so there's various pricing options. So every law firm operates in a different way. And so we could operate, you operate within your own reality, whatever that happens to be. Court schedules, staffing constraints, technology preferences, judicial rules of your circuit, ethical boundaries, most important, where you are comfortable in your case. So we adapt to your office structure, your caseload, your pace, and your practice style, whether you need a back office support, a structured research timeline, overflow assistance. You just have a big case and you need somebody to help you put that together. That's where we come in. And we can take these massive amounts of data and turn it into a case strategy for you to review and use, as a lawyer, to communicate with a client, establish pathways. We can set all of that stuff up for you to have the back office strategy for us. So behind the platform, we have a network of professionals that we're building that is around that. Imagine having 1,000 paralegals all working in different states, all part of the ecosystem using a structure that we have built and our app to get to our system. And that is still under development. The system already exists in pieces. And what we're doing is we're putting it together in one for our app and to make sure that your caseload. It's pretty funny because there are a lot of lawyers that are still working out of boxes that are doing paper, handling massive amounts of paper in their office. This program would allow you to get out of it. So Modern Law is designed, we're the hub of what you do. If you have overflow, we absorb it. You have capacity, you can participate. Like you have extra time, you participate in our ecosystem because we have a very good advertising platform as well that could be public facing. It's not yet. This is only for right now, just for lawyers, but we have a separate module that is going to be your firm specific. Okay. And your firm specific, like a part of the page, a part of the ecosystem, you join the ecosystem and you still get all the qualified electronic media, all of these things that we work. AI is we're developing this massive overhead AI that will control all of these portions here at the Modern Law ecosystem. So one of the things we are working on, one of the things that we did, like I said, is as back office support, we've been working and sending sunshine requests. And so now I'm going to switch gears and go a little bit to our Civic Outlaws page. And the Civic Outlaws are, we have decided and created a large movement, and we already have had quite a bit of, how do I want to put this, outreach for our services that we are providing. Sorry, you can tell that I'm typing, I assume, and trying to get to where I want to be. And the civicoutlaws.com is a the site is ready. Okay. And what Donald Trump has done for America, we are joining in. What he has done is he has made it acceptable, let's call it, to attack the bureaucracy, to attack, and there's been movements before. I'm not saying there aren't movements. There have been. And Civic Outlaws, we attack those sort of things. We talk about power and taking it back, okay? Taking the power that people do not have as bureaucrats, that statutorily, judicially, and executively, all of these, like legislatures on the one hand, everything that you think about when you talk about civic approach to things is one of the things that, and I'm not going to talk too much about it today on one of the focuses is the overreach of government and what it has done. I've talked about on this channel not too long ago about some of these efforts. And I'm going to repeat them because they are ongoing efforts. And if you go to civicoutlaws.com, you can see about what we are saying on our main page. Is Civic Outlaws. It's all about power that people have taken, and we want to take it back. And if you go to there's a whistleblowers page, you go to the About Us, you can become a civic warrior. We have merchandise that is being produced even now for you to buy T-shirts, hats, all of that, and become a civic warrior. There's a whistleblowers page, which you can talk about, whatever your issue is, speaking up about fraud, corruption, government overreach. There's a lot of pages that we're going to associate with on our platforms, and the websites are ready. We are ready. We are what we refer to as coming out of the closet. We're coming out of the closet. We've been doing this for several months anyway, but now we are prepared. Not that we weren't before, but our platform is well into development and can be used already for those who need to use it. Civic Outlaws is the impetus behind all of that. So Civic Outlaws goes out and does, for example, attacking. Well, why don't we use one that's right here? So who should use the form? The form for our whistleblowers is for anybody who has direct knowledge or serious concerns about wrongdoing tied to government agencies or regulatory bodies, law enforcement or oversight of law enforcement, business or organizations being targeted by overreach, contractors, vendors, or partners involved in governmental work. Now, it's also huge organizations. One of the other things we're doing is HOAs and what the HOAs are doing. I mean, it's nonsense. Since COVID, it's pretty funny. The rates of these HOAs they're making huge amounts of money and providing very little service to people. And the people who are directing it, and I'm not saying that all HOAs are bad. That's not the point. And I'm not saying that all government agencies are bad. That is also not the point. But there are bad actors. And we want to go after the bad actors, okay? There are people and you know what? Sometimes it's an educational and an outreach portion that they don't realize what they are doing, and they can repair these things. A lot of bureaucrats don't remember 10th grade in civics class, and we're a civics organization, Civic Outlaws, because we go after those people who don't remember their 10th grade their 10th grade civics lessons, right? The world or the government has three separate functions everywhere, okay? So but they overreach in these spaces. So a quick lesson in civics when it pertains to legal structures and government overreach, and where we go after the bureaucrat who's a lifelong pursuit of power. We keep them in check and try to stop them from the massive overreach that sometimes occurs, or at least to get him to think about it or to fight about it. Now, legislatures make the laws. Here's what we want as a law. They are the ones that are elected. They are elected by us, sometimes foolishly. And one of the very little things I love about the organization of politics and government in Missouri is that they have term limits. Okay, you might not like it, but it is extremely effective. Why? Because they can't be in office for life. The problem is people get into these spots and they stay there for life. Okay, the same thing happened. Now that's the legislature, and so we have term limits. Nobody ever complains about the term limits that appear in the executive branch. You can't be governor for life. Most states have a term limit. 2 terms, something like that. Then just like the president, and then get out. Then the president, people have been talking about the president. Well, this is all civics class, people. This is all civics class. And what we are talking about is the executive being limited. We know they're limited. They are limited by a term, and that term is here, okay? The legislature, at least in Missouri, is also limited by a term. And you can be, I forget the exact numbers, but I want to say you can have 5 2-year terms as a rep, and I don't know how many as a senator, two however many years. I don't even know. And I can't remember. I don't want to misstate it. And I'm not looking at notes for that. I'm just winging this, right? And but you need to understand what the way we think at Civic Outlaws, okay? So the term limits are there for the executive branch. The term limits are there for the statutory people in the legislature, right? So the statutes are created by those guys that we elected. They're approved by the executive that we elected, okay? And one of my biggest beefs in life and about everything is the judicial branch 3 of government. Okay, that judicial branch, now some judges are limited, local judges are limited to a term, a lot of judges are limited to a term, and you're going to be here for so many years, whatever, and then they get into those offices of power, and they are generally term limited. You're not, you're appointed for life, which is BS in my opinion. You're appointed for life in the federal structure, nonsense. And a lot of those guys, you stay in that seat of power for so long, trust me, they suck it up. And that, they tell you in civics class that the reason behind that is that, we want to have a stabilizing force that interprets the law and tells what it is to interpret the Constitution, okay? So, and I disagree and think that a massive focus of what the world needs to do is have a look at the judicial branch everywhere. And there needs to be some form of judicial, what would we call it? Some form of rebuilding the judicial branches of government. People have talked about it for a long time. And the judicial branch is the only lawless branch. They create rules. There's no election. There ain't no election for the senior power in the the judicial branch. And there's zero public influence in Missouri in the judicial branch. Zip. And this is where the power resides in the state of Missouri. But all those guys, as I've said before, they got to kiss ass to get to those positions. They got to politic to get to those positions or know the right people to get into there. And I've talked many, many times about what we call in Missouri the nonpartisan. Oh, yeah, it's nonpartisan, all right, because it's controlled by one organization which has zero oversight, and that's the Missouri Bar. So you want to talk about the ultimate corrupt bureaucrats, look right there. Okay. And I'm not saying they're all corrupt, not remotely. I'm saying the system has been corrupted. That is what I'm saying. And the system is certainly, there's zero, what do you call it? And I mean truly zero public overreach, zero public influence on the judicial branch at all. There's some judges in some counties that are still being elected by vote, and I'm okay with that. There's time limits in some of those, and I'm okay. I'm talking about the bigger structures, appellate courts, of the other courts. Those the public has no influence on. That is controlled by the power of the Missouri Bar, okay, the biggest bureaucracy that is untouchable in the state of Missouri. Okay, and in many other states. I don't mean to focus just on Missouri. And so if you look at the way that the judicial branch is formed in Missouri, especially, well, other states too, but on Missouri, I'm nearly an expert and can talk reasonably about this. And people will disagree with me. I'm fine with that, and I'm fine with other points of view. In fact, if somebody would like to come on and discuss structure, constitutional structure of these and why it works the way it is. See, because nobody ever questions these things. Nobody. And bureaucracy. So I've outlined to you the major, and generally the major upper portions, the legislature itself, Senate and representatives, especially in Missouri with the term limits, the executive branch, term limited. Those two, I talk about the power and how the power should work, and the power most of the time does work, okay? But there's influencers. And if you in Missouri had what we have, the idiocy that we have in Washington, D.C., which we also attack through Freedom of Information Act, through Sunshine Request and stuff like that, is the branches themselves, they understand their power, but those, especially on the federal level, are completely untouchable. The judicial branch on the federal level, absolutely untouchable. There is nothing you can do to them. They're zip. There's been tiny little impeachment actions, but even that, who knows whether anybody can really enforce them? Like, impeachment. Psh, what? Everybody's all our presidents have been impeached. Everybody wants to use that power. Doesn't mean crap, because impeachment doesn't mean anybody leaves office. Doesn't mean you've done anything. All it is a political game to distract the public from whatever else. Because there's zero effect to an impeachment. So what? People get impeached. Yeah, and you have these conferences that go on for months and months. What does it do to them? Nothing. Points out to the public that, this might be a bad guy. That's it. I could do that. Send me a paper. I'll say somebody's a bad guy for you. But impeaching them, nothing happens. Yeah, they're impeached. The public gets to know that they have it, but nobody removes them from office. That's extremely rare. Well, it hasn't happened. And, of course, I'm talking, huge macro issues. Micro, we can discuss specific cases as they come up. And I don't want this to be a complaining. This is very, very positive, because what we want to do is attack bureaucracy at all three levels. At the executive branch level, they have the power over all bureaucrats in the executive branch of government. Legislature, no, you don't talk much about them and their interns and the little girls they hire in the summer to look pretty in the halls, and they want to be involved in that, young men and everything that want to be politicians. That's how the internships work. That's how you go and work for people there, and they have staffs too. And so the legislative branch has plenty of staffing and plenty of bureaucrats, but there the public has a little bit of influence. So you don't really go after legislative staffers who've been there forever, and maybe they'll work for this legislator and then they stay and work for the next legislator when the teams come in. There's various rules regarding that and how that works. On the executive branch, the executive changes every 6 years, whatever, depending on which state, which office they're holding, governor, president, blah, blah, blah. But the bureaucrats never change. The bureaucrats are there for life. They take the directors of these places are influenced by which new governor comes in, but sometimes even they aren't switched. Okay. So the governor who we have elected is supposed to control some of the bureaucracy down below with the help of the huge executive branch. Okay, of government, but the big time bureaucrats that have been holding positions in various agencies forever, then they have been there forever. That's real power. And legislative staffers, I believe that they are mostly directed by the legislature, and they're doing the work of the legislature and creating the statutes. Okay, so somewhere in the line of all of this, the legislature creates the law, the governor imposes the law by putting his signature on it. It takes effect on whatever day, and the bureaucrats below are supposed to interpret the law. Okay. And everybody knows this, but I'm just giving you a little bit of a class. Everybody knows this if you've ever gone to civics class or if you remember it. If you don't, listen to me, because I go over this probably once a quarter, explain what I am complaining about and what my big bitches are about the whole thing. And so we attack those sorts of bureaucrats. If you go out to Civic Outlaws, you can see that our whistleblower page has you become a whistleblower. Speak up about fraud, corruption, government overreach primarily. Perhaps we should switch the order of those and speak up about government overreach, because that is the core of what Civic Outlaws does, right? Is we attack the core. We have, tell you what, we've become experts on submitting and getting back documents and examining those documents through the modern law ecosystem, which I'm also part of. And so Civic Outlaws is the ones who, it's our charity, 501c3, and we're looking for people to become a part of it, become a civic warrior. And we have some cool merch that we've been building, and we're going to have a merch page before too long, and there's plenty of contact in there. So if you've got a government overreach issue, you need to reach out to us and become a whistleblower. We have several acts that we are engaging in right now. What can you report? Regulatory overreach. Report agencies enforcing beyond what the law gives them the power to do. And abuses of that power. Selective or retaliatory enforcement against certain people or businesses. If you know my history, when I was practicing law, one of the big cases that I handled was a corrupt cop in the Mustang Drug Task Force up in Jefferson City. And that case was probably what got me my huge focus on corruption everywhere. Just because they're a police officer doesn't mean that you can trust them. Now, let's say that again. Just because they're a police officer doesn't mean that you can trust them. Does this mean that I hate police officers? Absolutely not. I appreciate what they engage to do. I respect and honor what they have to do, because sometimes they're put in danger, and they are in danger. I don't like militarization. The massive, everybody's a SWAT officer. Everybody's wearing bulletproof vests everywhere they go. I'm against that. That may be a reality of the world, but I'm totally against it. Back when I was talking about it, there were police stations, police departments putting tanks in front of there. I drove by a police station. I wish I could remember where it was. And out front, they had been donated a tank and personnel carriers. I took a case one time where a guy got shot, and he had like 80 holes in his truck in Kansas City. Got followed by, I swear to God, 24, 23, some huge ungodly number of police vehicles, including a Bradley personnel carrier on a flatbed truck that they hauled along and put in there, and that was chasing the guy too. And he led a slow, what was his name? O.J. Simpson type slow chase through. I wish I had a video of this idiocy that I read from the paperwork. This poor guy got killed by cops. He got shot, bullet holes in his truck. There were so many, and people don't know the stories of these type of things. Talk about government overreach. Talk about cops being untrained. If they got, do you need a Bradley fighting vehicle being hauled behind someone with a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on top? Or maybe it was a smaller caliber machine gun, but there was a gun mount on the top, and it shot this guy with a burst of rounds, as did several other police in Kansas City. It's a bullshit story. Pardon my French, but that never should have happened. That guy shouldn't be dead. However, I'm not saying that the police didn't necessarily on the ground at the time, an individual police officer, that each one of them acted inappropriately. Some of them did, absolutely. Am I attacking all of them? No. All of these shots were fired by, there's 28 or 29 police officers present, and only 4 or 5 of them opened fire and killed this guy and made Swiss cheese out of his truck. And that story is 2011, something like that story. I didn't take it. I referred him to another person. But the story itself is crap. What happened to that kid never, ever in a million years should have happened. He's a slow drive through the streets of Kansas City at 2 o'clock in the morning while crying and talking to whoever he is talking to on the telephone and getting blown away. When he steps out of the vehicle, of course, he stupidly had a weapon in his hand. And I'm not saying that maybe the one officer shouldn't have shot him. I'm talking about the global part of that needs to be trained, instilled. Some or one of those officers, the 5 who shot especially, or whatever number it was, they should be examined. Those are the type of cases that we want to review and set up and refer out to fantastic attorneys that are part of our ecosystem. And to the Civic Outlaws will do the intake. Modern Law Ecosystem finds the structure. If you've got and I don't want to go too much back to Modern Law Ecosystem, but the collection of information is a very big part of what we do. Forcing the issues through Sunshine Law, through Freedom of Information requests. I am an expert. I'm creating other experts. I'm seeking other experts to assist in this charity called Civic Outlaws, where we go after this type of thing. And I've got several examples. Hell, I've been talking for 40 minutes on this right now. But these are important issues. My request to you today is to check out the Civic Outlaws website for sure. Check out the Modern Law Ecosystem website for sure. If you're an attorney, associate with us. If you're a person affected by overreach of government, let us know. We can help, and we can go after these guys. We have several things that we're talking about, and I'm not an expert on the Civic Outlaws site yet, but if you go to the Civic Outlaws and talk about our commitment, and we're trying to defend freedom, legal direction, public advocacy, when government overreach whenever government agencies overreach, we go after them. Individuals are left confused, isolated, overwhelmed, and we have a growing network of resistance. It's getting huge, friends and neighbors. We have some lobbyists that we've been working with and some other things. So this is going to be big. And it already is, in fact. And we've got several attacks ongoing even now. And, we're talking about, for example, Missouri Alcohol Tobacco Control, ATC. That has been huge. And we have found out all kinds of stuff. We're after flock surveillance cameras. Remember what Ike went through last year with all the BS. And, to shut him up, they attacked him. I think that whole process needs to be reviewed. Frankly, I think he should sue the assholes for what they did to him. But, getting rid of the problem is another approach. I'm not against the approach that he decided to take on that. It's an individual approach. He had to do it. Who's going to lose when they come after you? They come after people. I expect they'll come after me, because they always do. And but let's talk about HOA abuse, regulatory overreach. Talk about that. Timeshares, deception and buying and consumer entrapment on those. Gaming machines in Missouri. These are not all abstract issues. These are happening now. to real people, real companies, we can help. Okay. And through Civic Outlaws, heck, we call it becoming a civic warrior. Go to Civic Outlaws, check it out. info@civicoutlaws.com is where the information comes from. We have Modern Law Ecosystem. You can get me specifically, my email address, samuelt@modernlawecosystem.com, samuelt@civicoutlaws.com. And as always, samuelt@internationalflavor.com. And so that's how you can get a hold of me. If you want to talk about any of these things, government overreach, I'm going to start talking a little bit about local issues and specifics here on the channel too, and interviewing people who've been affected by overreach from time to time. I don't have any coffee today. Was on a little bit of a rush to get here and almost didn't make it in time for my show in order to talk about this. So I think that my main pitch, and I've talked about this too long this morning, I didn't want to go that far, but here we are. I wanted to get to some of the other topics we discussed. So assume the first half of the show was all about our new platforms, Modern Law Ecosystem, and civicoutlaws.com. Become a civic warrior with us. Fight against this corruption. Get some of our merch and start wearing it. We are coming. We're coming, bureaucrats. And we're going to attack the overreach. Now, I did quite a bit. There's the big news. Now, I'm going to switch back to the international topics that I love so much and talk about on this show pretty frequently, is the talks about peace. Okay? It's not going well. And I never thought it would. You know, Kremlin is talking about why they postponed the Russia-Ukraine U.S. talks. They had been planned for Sunday, but they were moved because of scheduling issues. The second round of trilateral talks between Russia, Ukraine, United States are going to take place in Abu Dhabi later this week, but not yesterday, Sunday. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin's press secretary, he said scheduling issue is the reason for postponement that had been planned for Sunday. Vladimir Zelensky said on Sunday that the meeting in the United Arab Emirates had been rescheduled for February 4 and 5. Peskov told journalists, there's been a lot of talk to, Sergei Lavrov gave another interview over the weekend too, which I have bits and pieces of to share with you. But Peskov said the negotiations in Abu Dhabi had been really planned for this past Sunday, yesterday. But additional coordination of the schedules of the three parties was required. And the second round will be held on Wednesday and Thursday, and he confirmed that that's what's happening. So hopefully something will happen. I don't think anything's going to move. Nothing came out of the first round. The Russians are still advancing on the eastern fronts of Ukraine, and Ukraine is still in a blackout. And that's important. Ukraine is it's friggin' cold over there. You think it's cold here, go there and do it with no power, right? I'm sure people are tearing down fences outside of their homes and burning them in a pile in the middle of the house, or doing something to try to stay warm, 20 pair of socks or something. Who knows? I don't like being cold in my home. I don't like it. And, I enjoy winter sometimes, but for the most part, not really. But the negotiations are reset. The initial rounds were held on January 23 and 24. That was the first time that Moscow, Kiev, and Washington sat down together. Both sides, Russia and America, really it is Russia and American interests, that have been pushing Ukraine. Certainly they aren't being pushed on behalf of Ukraine. This is robbery of resources on the grand level. This is government overreach, using the militaries of another country to do what you want. I talk about that sort of propaganda from both sides all of the time. So, it's The first time they all three met, the first time, and more importantly, screw the U.S., at least in this regard, but Moscow and Kiev sitting down together. They can't do it without a referee, because Zelensky's an idiot. Putin's knows what he wants, and he's not going to deviate. And he's been saying it forever. This is what we want. This is what we're going to take. They need to capitulate in Ukraine and say, by the way, here's Zaporozhye, here's Kherson, here's the Donbass, Lugansk and Donetsk. Here you go. And if they're not careful, they're going to lose the Sumy region too. And what's the other one? The other one up in the north, I can't remember the name of. And if they're really idiots, eventually they're going to lose Odessa and Nikolaeva down in the south and be cut off from the Black Sea. And so it is absolutely foolish. I mean, those are reality, okay? That's the reality of the world, that if you don't give the Russians what they want, they will continue to fight. And by the way, I said, nobody ever gets what they want in this world, but Russia is going to force that issue because they feel it is a a foundational structure of what happened to them. And they really did get screwed, folks. They got screwed. Nobody talks about it over here. The West screwed them and treated them like wicked stepchildren. That's exactly what happened over the last 30, 40 years. Russia finally said, screw that, stop it. Why are you destroying things that you said you wouldn't destroy? And I'm not saying that they've always, that everything is on the that they're 100% everything is there. They got their own forms of overreach, but the foundation, what they call the root causes of the conflict, have never been addressed. Never. It was close when they had a deal in 2 months in April of 2022. They were close, very close. The war could have been avoided, and they only had 2 months. Russia came in with a massive pile of people and took over places. They voluntarily retreated to pull back after Boris Johnson, after Ukraine said, here's what we're going to do. They did the ceasefire and backed off and had talks and did that in 2022 in April, saying, okay, now here's what's going to happen. Here's what could happen to you. We're not against that. All we want you to do is listen to us and address these root causes, which they never did. They still haven't. Zelensky's still living in a dream world where he's in this dream world that he's going to get back the things that Russia took because they wouldn't listen, and he's a poor leader. That, all he is a wartime hack for the West. For give me money, give me money, give me money. Corruption, 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 corruption. Everywhere in Ukraine, backed by Western money. Fighting for democracy that doesn't exist in Ukraine, okay? That is the reality that we are talking about. That is why Russia and Ukraine need to sit down together, and there needs to be a change in the thought process, which may be what the United States is bringing through Rubio and whoever else, Witkoff on the team that goes over and tries to reason with Zelensky. That, by the way, you're not getting back the Donbass. You're not getting back Lugansk, Donetsk. Crimea is ancient history. That is gone. You don't get to go back to the borders of 1991 Zelensky, because you cocked that up as a country by following the Western warmongering a-holes who wanted to create in Ukraine a 1 million-man army that sucked into the NATO forces and become the largest force, kind of like another Poland, okay? Poland is now full of American military. Never existed when I was in the military. We stopped at like the Fulda Gap and in Berlin, and when it was a split country. And I got orders to go over there when I was in the military to be stationed in where the Fulda Gap is. I forget the name of the states. I turned those orders down and went instead to Fort Hood because would have required me to add a couple of years. Foolish, looking back on it, hindsight, but that's what happened. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about that. Who really cares? Let's go back to what Moscow, Kiev, and Washington sitting down together for the first time since February 2022. And despite the meeting having been described as constructive, everybody comes out and says, oh, geez, those talks were great. Not a freaking thing happened, right? It didn't produce any concrete agreement. U.S. Secretary Marco Rubio says territorial issues remain. Here's his quote. Here's a genius statement of them all. A bridge we haven't crossed, meaning we didn't talk about it. And he added that there's active work going on to try and see if both sides' views on that can be reconciled. They cannot. They will not. If Ukraine doesn't capitulate on the Donbass, if they don't capitulate on Donetsk and Lugansk at least, and Crimea for sure, and then probably Zaporozhye and Kherson, is it Kherson? Kharkiv. No, it's Kherson region down below, not the Kharkiv region. Kharkiv region is the one I couldn't remember, which is up to the north. And Sumy region's up there, states. We won't call them those regions. So we're talking states. For American points of view, these are states, the state of Donetsk, the state of Lugansk, all Russian all the time. Everything east of the Dnieper River has been Russian for centuries. And and trying to conflict, or America especially, be involved in charge of wars that have been going on with these people that have been crammed together in Europe for centuries. It's wrong for us to be involved. It's also wrong for us to install American bases in Ukraine and in Poland too, for that matter. We invited, of course, Belarus, which would be, right next door, and Belarus said no. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia are all extremely anti-Russian because for 1,500 years they've been going back and forth with kingdoms of Prussia, kingdoms of I've visited the castles of them recently on the border of Poland in Brest. And that's on the Russian run. It's not even Russian anymore, Belarusian side. But those places have been overrun for centuries, and we shouldn't be involved. And Russia is saying, screw that. Donetsk, Lugansk, Russian, by the way, Crimea, Russian, the Sevastopol ports, Russian. All of these things have been there forever. I'm not to say Ukrainians haven't been there too, but the bulk of it, and even all the Ukrainians spoke Russian until they quit, saying, oh, geez, the Russians are the bad guys, with the help of propaganda from the West. Okay? So when you talk about these issues, they are not going to move. The only acceptable part would be capitulation by the Zelensky corrupt team and corrupt. So much money has been stolen over there, it's not even funny. So Rubio says it's territorial and issues are a bridge we haven't crossed. They won't bring it up because they know that's what puts a harpoon in any sort of process for getting rid of it. He says there's active work going on to try to see if both sides' views can be reconciled. I know I repeat that, but those views will not be reconciled. Okay? Lugansk, Donetsk, Crimea, at least, are all gone. The Zaporizhia power plant is probably one of the largest issues. That power plant's the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. Okay? And it is huge. And it is being controlled by the Russians right now. I'll bet you anything that is one of the key focuses of trying to get that plant back under Ukrainian control. I heard several other commenters speaking on that particular issue and where that is, but Russia's got it right now. And if Russia wanted to cut off power, and the IAEA has been in there, the nuclear threat reduction people have been in there trying to keep that place somewhat safe from bombings from both sides, mostly Ukraine, that they'd prefer to blow it up than it go into Russian hands. And so Moscow insists that any settlement includes Ukraine's withdrawal from the Donbass. which, we support referendums everywhere. If we're the U.S., we claim some referendum or real democracy somewhere like Serbia, which is BS, and then we go and enforce that because only we get to determine when a referendum is really real or not. Moscow says there's a referendum in 2022, and that all these areas recognition of that the Ukraine needs to recognize these new areas as Russian, including the Crimea. Zelensky has repeatedly, he's always said, under no circumstances will we agree to territorial concessions. So Russia's going to drive to the borders, and they may go further, because the same arguments exist in Nikolaeva and Odessa, especially. Okay. And the further east you go, the more Russian it gets. The further west you go, the more Polish it gets. Poland has the same issues historically. Poland still makes claim to Lvov on the left of Ukraine. The same issues going on for centuries. Same freaking thing. Remember when Tucker Carlson went over and interviewed Putin? What did Putin talk about? Historic reasons for these fights. And nobody wanted to talk about that. All they want to talk about is today. Why can't the U.S. put bases 500 kilometers from Russia? In Ukraine? Screw that, says Russia. That ain't happening. It'd be like us, Russia coming in and saying, well, geez, Canada likes us more. What is Donald Trump complaining about China so much for? China and Canada and the meetings between them, the improvements of their bases. Why? He don't want China on the borders of the United States. Now, China doesn't do it militarily, but they do it economically. Russia has a cultural foundation for what they are doing. It's absolutely cultural. And Zelensky didn't speak Ukrainian ever until he was running for office. A lot of them spoke it in their homes, but Russian is what the guy spoke. Everything you go see on his comedy shows was all Russian. All of it. All the time. And so there's a lot of, little things that just are obvious, that you look at and you go, what are these idiots fighting over from the Ukraine side? Well, territorial integrity? Yeah, that works for the U.S. We just took Venezuela and we're headed to Greenland. So Moscow says you got to talk about the referendums and the reality on the ground. When the Donbass regions voted to join Russia in 2022, those referendums include recognition of this country's new borders, and Zelensky has to live with that. This includes the Crimea, which he's still bitching about. Zelensky repeatedly says that nope. And so these things are gonna, talks are gonna fail unless they recognize those concessions. And that is the point of my rant. But while calling a diplomatic solution preferable, Russia says it's ready to achieve its goals through military means. So either make these basic agreements or we're going to continue to force the issue. And Ukraine is on its heels. They got nobody left. They got no power. They have no reserves. Their people can't live. Kiev's in a blackout. Lots of places are in a blackout for 22 hours a day. And then they get intermittent power in certain places. According to some schedule, you never know when the hell you're getting any power. So what do? Well, it's cold enough. You put your meats out in your patio, and you don't need a refrigerator. You don't get one anyway, and so you've got to do something. The postponement of these talks a few days ago, Abu Dhabi followed a surprise trip to Florida Saturday by Russian presidential envoy Kirill Dmitriev, and he met with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, Treasury Secretary Bessent, who I think is a moron, President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, who I'm fairly impressed with, and a White House senior advisor named Josh Greenbaum. Witkoff said Washington was encouraged by the meeting that Russia is working towards securing peace in Ukraine. And Dmitriev said those discussions were constructive. So hopefully something will come of it, but it's going to be capitulation. It's going to be recognition of reality on the ground. That is indisputable. Anything else is probably up for grabs. One of the commentators was talking the other day about the Zaporizhzhia power plant, like I said. And that Zaporizhzhia power plant could be a method to resolve this conflict. Remember me giving discussions about interest-based bargaining and positional bargaining. So positions are stuff that you're never going to live with. The positions I just described, those are position-based bargaining, all of it. Where the position is, nope, we want to go back to the borders of 1991. That's Zelensky. And Putin saying, no, we've had a referendum. We're keeping Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and Crimea, by the way. That's a done deal. And you need to recognize the new borders. And somebody in the West, there's only been, I think Nicaragua recognized Crimea and the Donbass as Russian. I could be mistaken on that, but I believe they did. Recognized it. And the U.S. recognizes places all the time. We recognize what OG, a real government, we engage in government overthrow all the time. And, we justify things that we say by, oh, gee, it's a reality. The people on the ground wanted that. Yeah, okay. Nobody else is allowed to do that. Only us on the global stage. And so, part of that border is a reality. That's part of positional-based bargaining, okay? That's positions. Interest-based bargaining is completely different. What are the interests? The interest is to get rid of the war. These are the interests. To quit fighting. To live in peace like we have, for the most part, for 1,500 years, except every 100 years, every century, some other asshole's got to come in and create a war to go somewhere else, back and forth. We talk about the Germans. We talk Polish had their share. Estonia had its share. When I was in what do you call it? The Baltic states this year in those people have the Brest, in the Brest, that place has been overrun for centuries. And it's still one of the big places for being strategic in I suppose that'd be northeastern Europe. I suppose you'd call it Northeast. I think it pretty much is. But Poland's been involved in that. Germany's had a major war. Italy was involved in a major war. The Turks ran up from the one side. The Russians have come back across. And every 100 years it's something else. And nobody ever goes back and looks at history of where this should be. And instead, somebody wants to push and create a new war. These are the same arguments that have been going on for centuries, people. And if they don't address getting rid of the war as, what should be, forcing Zelensky to accept reality in interest space. All right, what interests can we give to you? Your people are gone. They've spread out all over the planet, and they're not coming back. That's a reality. Ukraine, which used to be some 40-something million people, is down to half that. And most of them have left, and generations have left. Everybody's parting it out now to be a part of what we want to have some of that. It's it's over. Militarily, it's done. And so somebody needs to come to the conclusion that it's friggin' done. Talk about the interest base. The interest is in getting rid of the war. What can we do to get rid of the war? Get rid of your positions. That's how it works. So that's an important part of what is going on this week. And so keep your eyes out on that. There's been all kinds of now there's a Frexit reality. Remember when Britain left the EU. Huge protests, pretty good size protests, organized by a patriot party in France. This is coming. This stuff, when people were talking at Davos last week, they were talking about looking at the nationalist agendas for everywhere. Like the United States is taking care of itself, is looking out for itself. Primarily, there was a lot of talk about that. And part of that involves, nonsensical talks about seizing other areas of property and starting wars with other countries to do so, or using force to do so. I'm taking Greenland. Have a nice day. That's happening. French protesters are, they tore up EU flags during rallies in central Paris over the weekend. And they've been calling for the country's withdrawal from the EU to protect farming communities. Farming is a big deal. They're doing the same thing. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember this, but you remember I was talking with I think it was JR. A song came on the radio in a Convoy with McCall, CJ McCall, but I can't remember who sings that song. But it came on my music while we were sitting there talking about something else. And I remembered about, those movies like Convoy, movies like Smokey and the Bandit. Remember the basis for that was there's beer in Texarkana and the boys are thirsty in Atlanta. And he had to go back. It was going from Texarkana to, he's going to Texarkana to get the beer. It's taking an illegal run to bring booze across state lines and bring it back to the Bandit. And the Bandit was bringing it back to those idiot guys. Well, that was real fights. Interstate fights based on the Interstate Commerce Commission, the ICC. And there was real fights between truckers, companies, and delivering products that somebody might order. That these were real fights. There were state tariffs. State. You couldn't bring your beer from Texas into Arkansas or into, you could into Arkansas, but you couldn't, according to the movie. I don't know what reality was, but the ICC and the fights of truckers in the 70s was because a lot of these states had different rules and different rates and different tariffs, and everything was different. You had to go through and pay taxes on crap every time you cross a state line. They would check your truck and you'd pay some tax. So a trucker's life back then, they fought over all of this bullshit that meant they couldn't earn a living. They were stopped at state lines everywhere, and there were big riots. The convoy thing was a reality, and they had convoys to go to state capitals, to block the traffic. All the truckers take all their trucks up. So these are reality. These happened. Imagine that in Europe. It's happening now. Frexit is, look, this one size fits all has destroyed what we as French people know, but we're separate countries. EU's going, and I'm not saying the EU's going to collapse, but the EU is having the same fights that some states had way back when. That's what's going on. And so the demonstration, which drew more than 1,000 people, was organized by a guy named Florian Philippot, who's the leader of the Patriots Party, a sovereignist movement campaigning for Frexit. So in a video he posted on Sunday on his X account, Philippot is holding the EU flag alongside a man he described as an angry farmer. So our trucking wars are now farmer wars over there. And it's a reality. Everybody's talking about farming war over there. So the pair of them, the angry farmer and this guy named Philpott, ripped up the flag in two and threw it into a cheering crowd as demonstrators waved French tricolor flag and they were tearing up the EU flag. With Alexander Pat, an angry farmer, we get rid of the blue dishcloth, the blue rag with stars, and it's over, he said. A growing number of farmers, and we all know that only Frexit, French exit, will save French agriculture. And trust me, it's coming from a lot of different places because they're putting things in place to allow Ukraine to take over the bulk of all of that stuff. And the rules are being twisted to, especially for recovery. There's so much talk on so much of all this going on. It's an interesting time to be alive, no doubt. This wave, this guy, Philippot, he argues that everyone in France is suffering because of EU policies. He says the rally is a national march for France's exit from the EU and for restoration of French independence. So this wave of farmer protest in France has escalated last year following proposed free trade agreements between the EU and South America. They want to bring in South American, groceries. And this South American bloc, it's called Mercosur. French farming unions are warning that the deal would bankrupt domestic production with cheap imports from Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, Bolivia, which aren't subject to any regulatory standards. Same fights globally. We're talking Trump tariff on this, Canada working with China on this. EU working with China. Russia working with India. India working with and all of these people are talking about their national interests and how do we improve our national struggle, including us, including America. So it escalated after these agreements, and on a poll conducted in December indicated that 8 in 10 French people support the movement. Not to get out, but they support the farmers. They support French farmers. Last week, the mayors of the towns of Magnanville and Garganville in the Seine Valley removed EU flags from their town halls in a symbolic show of support for farmers. They're taking the EU flags down in some places. Down with the EU, Ursula von der Leyen out. Get out, Ursula. Viva la France, says Magnanville Mayor Mikkel Lebouc, he said after taking off the flag. His counterpart in Garganville, Jan Perrin, said French agriculture deserves protection. That's how it goes. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is saying he can easily solve the UN's money problems. Let me run the UN. I'll take care of that. Here's how you fix it. The global body is at risk of imminent financial collapse, says Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And Donald Trump can solve the UN money problems. Here's how. U.S. President Trump claims he could swiftly fix the UN's national money problem, or United Nations money problems, if the organization would ask him. All they got to do is ask, and I'll fix it. He's, his the Trump deal. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said last week that the global body is at risk of imminent financial collapse as a result of unpaid dues and funding shortages because of some member states. Unless the collection of contributions drastically improves, the organization won't be able to implement the 2026 budget and will run out of funds for key programs. On Sunday, Trump told Politico, he said, that he's aware of any U.S. debt to the UN, but he also said, I can solve their money problems very easily and make sure other nations pay up. If they come to Trump and told him I'd get everybody to pay up, just like I got NATO to pay up, all I have to do is call these countries and they'll send checks within minutes, said Trump. I couldn't find the clip, but I didn't look very hard either. But citing unnamed UN officials, ABC News reports on Friday said that Washington owes $2.2 billion to the organization's budget and another $1.8 billion to its separate purse for peacekeepers. So separately, that's a total of $4 billion that the U.S. owes the UN. And Trump is going to fix their policies. Guterres is saying, well, nobody's paying. And Trump says, I'll call the states to pay. But we're the ones that owe $4 billion. Maybe that $4 billion would be helpful. I have a lot of issues with the bureaucracy in at any level, including the UN, and these are fat cats, and they make other financial people fat cats. That's how the system works, friends and neighbors. And so whether you're a business executive or a government executive, you control the means and the capital, more importantly, of the nation and where it goes and who gets a chunk of it. It's bureaucrats everywhere. The UN's an enormous bureaucracy, and the UN needs money. The financial situation, according to Guterres, is so bad that the UN could end up abandoning its New York headquarters, said the New York Times. And this is according to high-ranking sources within the body. Frankly, I think it needs to go anyway. Why in the hell are we bringing all those people here to pay them enormous salaries here? Why can't you send them off to some place where it's much cheaper to live? Get rid of these a-holes. Send them off to, I don't know, Brazil. Pick a spot. It doesn't matter. Go build a UN tower there and send these a-holes out, because it's the same thing. It's some enormous overpaid bunch of bureaucrats making decisions that affect the rest of us. Unelected, by the way. Ursula von der Leyen's not elected. Ursula von der Leyen, Kaja Kallas, all those nut jobs in the EU that are control things, they aren't elected. There's no control in the EU. It's the bureaucracy, just like us. And so Trump rules out any sort of development like the UN. He said, the UN's not leaving New York, and it's not leaving the U.S. because the UN has tremendous potential. When I'm no longer around, when I'm no longer around to settle wars, the UN can, he said. I doubt that. And he hasn't ended any wars lately. He's created a couple of new ones. The statement goes against the U.S. president's earlier criticism of the organization, which he accused of being ineffective. What is the purpose of the United Nations, he said recently, September. All they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter, and then they never follow that letter up. Empty words, and empty words don't solve war, he argued. And since Trump returned to office a year ago, the UN has withdrawn from multiple UN programs and organizations, including the World Health Organization and the cultural UNESCO. And UNESCO sites, there aren't any in the United States, if I recall. But if you go to places in Pakistan I went to some in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and they were fantastic. And Kyrgyzstan. And there's some fantastic UNESCO sites that they develop and spend a ton of money on over there. And since Trump returned to office, we've withdrawn from some of those programs like UNESCO. If you remember when Trump joked about adding 3 new states, he floated the idea of spanning the country to Canada, Greenland, and Venezuela. He's already said this. U.S. President Trump said he plans to expand the country by adding Canada, Greenland, and Venezuela as new states. Later, he described his remarks as a joke. This is reported by the Washington Post. He made the comments at the annual Alfalfa Club dinner Saturday, an exclusive gathering of CEOs, politicians, and Washington luminaries. It was the first time he had addressed the club, whose members include J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, philanthropist David Rubenstein, and outgoing Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. So many people, Trump told the audience this, here he is. So many people in the room I hate. Most of you I like, he told the audience. He added he might cut his speech short to watch the invasion of Greenland before saying, we're not going to invade Greenland, we're going to buy it. It's never been my intention to make Greenland a 51st state. I want to make Canada the 51st state. Greenland will be the 52nd state. Venezuela can be the 53rd, said Trump. He repeatedly made acquiring Greenland a policy objective, arguing that the autonomous Danish island Its strategic location and resources are crucial to U.S. security. He claimed Denmark is too weak to defend it from a alleged Russian or Chinese threat. You make up. They say, the Chinese are coming. Look at them. They're making deals with Canada. Last year, Trump said Canada would be better off as the cherished 51st state of the United States. He referred to Canadian Prime Minister as the governor. He's argued that the only way to resolve trade disputes between the two companies. Recently, he threatened 100% on tariff on Canadian goods if Ottawa pursues closer ties with China, which they're doing. In Venezuela, the U.S. took over the country in early January, captured the president, brought him to New York. I'm sorry to laugh about that. It ain't even funny. It's just what we're doing. Washington demands total access to the country's oil. We get to take the oil. Screw you, Venezuelans. That's our oil. He's just taking it. Speaking during a cabinet meeting last week, Trump said the administration was getting along well with Venezuela's interim leadership. They don't get to pick their own. They get interim leaders that have to be acceptable to the U.S. and confirms that major U.S. oil companies are scouting new projects in the country. Yep, we're colonizing. We're taking over new states. Isn't this nuts? And the world has gone loopy. We're just going nuts. And let's see if I can find something quick to finish out the show with today. There were several good opinion pieces I read. Like the liberal world order is collapsing. Future civilization states and an alliance between technology and tradition, says Dr. Stephen Turley. And India, well, here, this is important. I was going to share this too, and I probably can get to this through the end here. India is talking about its record military spending. India, of all places. New Delhi has put 15% more in the federal budget after its brief war with Pakistan. They have put $85 billion for military spending in the budget in 2026 and 27, a record 15% increase, said Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. He told the parliament in her annual budget speech. The sharp rise follows a military conflict with neighboring Pakistan last May. Capital expenditures for the armed forces was $23 billion and was aimed at funding major procurement programs. The union budget of 2025, 26 and 27 will help further strengthen India's defense capabilities, said Defense Minister Rajnath Singh on X. The key focus of the budget follows Operation Sindoor, a limited military operation launched in response to the cross-border hostilities with Pakistan earlier in the year. It is the modernization of the armed forces, he said, that they are seeking. So problems are coming everywhere. That New Delhi and Islamabad, from May 7 to 10, they last year exchanged fire following militant attacks on April 22 in Kashmir and Jammu that killed 26 people. And so those clashes involved the extensive use of missile systems and the growing role of long-range strikes. Everybody's watching Ukraine and Russia and knowing that lots of this drone warfare is all new. Everything is now going that way. Everything. And it's included. They're creating missile systems and creating all of that. So that's one of discussions between Moscow and New Delhi because Russia is going to provide to them the Sukhoi Su-57, very, very modern aircraft in India, and they're in advanced stage. Moscow's an active participant in New Delhi's plans to make weapons locally with Russian defense equipment already manufactured under licensing agreements in India. So worlds are growing. It's becoming a little more dangerous. I think there ought to be a lot more focus, like in Frexit and going like that. The bureaucratic state is being attacked in many places. The bureaucracy of the EU is being attacked. We're attacking here in Missouri and America, doing our small part to get rid of bureaucracy and corruption and bureaucracy here in mid-Missouri. My name is Samuel Trapp, and you need to get on board with my modern law ecosystem and our project of civicoutlaws.com. This show is Damn Radio. We're starting a great broadcast week here in Damn Radio. Lots of shows. You can watch them all by going to Damn Radio, or listen to them all by going to damnradio.com/schedule to get our schedule of other people that give talks. And I'm here every morning from 7:30 to 9, and I save them all at internationalflavor.com when they are finished. I appreciate everyone being here this morning and hope you join me again tomorrow. Have a very nice day.